Hi there. Hello. I am here with my sister, Tracie Decker. She does use a hyphen.
I do. It's true. And I'm here with my sister, Emily Guy Birkin. No hyphen.
Yeah, it's true. Trips people up. Together, we are Lightbringers, where we illuminate the deeper meaning of the crime-solving devil TV show. And yes, we're overthinking it.
Totally overthinking it. That's what we do.
It's what we do.
And today we are overthinking 511 and 512. Is that right?
That's correct.
511 and 512. So resting devil face and Daniel Espinoza, naked and afraid.
Yes.
So this is the first time I've rewatched Daniel Espinoza, Naked and Afraid since the first time I watched it through.
Same for me.
Not one I return to, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll get there.
Start at the beginning. It's a very good place to start. So resting devil face.
So I want to mention that Resting Devil Face starts with the song Believer by Imagine Dragons, which is the favorite song of one of my children. My children tend to have musical taste that can best be described as earnest young white man on his knees singing with his eyes closed.
Oi!
So, and when he first started liking that song, I was surprised because I was like, where did you hear this song? And like, I recognized it. It was on Lucifer somewhere. And I could not remember what episode it was in. So I've been looking for it all this time. And finally I was like, there it is. So that was just, but I also want to say was very, very good sound cue and like combination of the song with the action, which I'm sure is why they did it. Because they're like, all right, united front, and then it's first things first, da, 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 and then and then they stop the music.
The cinematography, the direction in that first scene is just so delightful with the slow-mo of them like walking toward each other and
the when they do the as they're walking down the stairs, they like bump fists but sideways, which is like so brotherly,
so cute, and like Lucifer like checking his cuffs like he always does, and that's in slow-mo, and then in real time with them like talking, in normal time, and then slow-mo again, and then them talking. There's just something really satisfying about that setup, especially and the setup, and like Amenadiel's like, you can trust me, I'm with you, and then immediately like it doesn't even take a full
dad says he's fine.
Like 1 minute before. So much for the United Front.
Well, and it's one of the things I really appreciate about this storyline and this episode is it strikes me that the writers have been through the issue of dealing with a parent aging and needing more help, not being as independent, that sort of thing. Because that it's very much all of those complex emotions, very much the like recreating your childhood roles in the family, where Amenadiel's immediately folds, is like, but he says he's fine, I'm sure it's okay. And he's the eldest, and the youngest rebellious one is the one who's like, no, we gotta be firm.
Yep.
I had forgotten how delightful this episode was, because I've rewatched it at least a couple of times, but it's not one of the ones that I go back to, and I was like, oh, it should be. This is fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. There's a lot of fan service in it too, like in the gym, in the boxing gym. I don't know if you noticed, but I actually paused it. Like the ads, they're all things that we've seen in the show.
Yeah, there's like Top Meat and
Azaria, the singer.
Yeah, the singer.
And the cabin, which was that reality show.
That's what it was. Yeah.
There was one that I didn't recognize. The top left corner is Hala Bay.
Oh yeah, I know who that is. So that was the rapper who was killed and then taken over by a demon in the end of season 4.
Yeah. Got it.
So
so that
was a fun Easter egg,
like fun fan service there with that. So that was pretty cool. Some of the things that, if we're gonna overthink it, like, I get where they were going, and they had to really like show us, not just tell us that like God set God's it's really hard to use male.
No.
God set God's powers aside.
In this universe, God is male.
Yeah.
And we can
Dennis Haysbert is male. Yeah.
Yes. And so when we say God, we're talking about the character. We're not talking about the actual Hashem.
Whatever that is. So yeah, when Dennis Haysbert's God sets his powers aside so that he can experience what it's like to be like Lucifer. And like I get where they're going, and then they had to like, they made it funny, like that when they close their eyes, everything disappears. Like, but I don't know.
God would know that.
I think so.
I mean, God is all knowing.
Yeah. And
so God would know what it would be like to experience humanity, you'd think.
I mean, I don't, there was something about that just didn't quite sit right with me. And like, it was useful for storytelling effect insofar as like Maze was going to try and kill him, and she couldn't if he hadn't sort of set his powers aside, and and the comedic effect of like him having to go to the bathroom for the first time.
That one I believed. Like that one, I'll give that one. Like not realizing it goes dark when you close your eyes, no. But the like, see an almighty being just being like, yeah, I don't need to worry about that.
Right. And also he knew what it was. It's not like it was like, what is this feeling? Yeah. So so appreciated that, and also they needed to continue the, he's losing it, he's slipping by literally losing the powers. Oh, that's an interesting metaphor made real. Losing it. Anyway,
well, and it's also, I feel like I remember when this season first came out, and I was talking to someone who doesn't watch the show about how much I appreciated how they were able to tell a different story of something that's a very real pain of like, not only of the person who's experiencing like a loss of abilities, but also their children seeing it. And for one thing, I mean, I'm not there's no lack of stories about, people dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia and stuff like that. But this is the first one that I've seen that I really felt like I was just like, I could feel this in a way that was different. And in part because, I can think of like one or two examples of and maybe it's because I saw it when I was a teenager. There's a movie called something like Raising Hope or something like that with what's her name, Sandra Bullock in it, and her father or grandfather has Alzheimer's, but you don't meet him until after he's just no longer there. And so something about this, about seeing like he's still the parent, and yet he's not, and it's terrifying. Like that is really visceral. Yeah. Hope Floats, that's what it's called. It's called Hope Floats.
Yeah, Raising Hope was a TV show.
That was a TV show. Yeah. That was very different. Yeah.
There's also something in this episode interesting about thinking about sort of who we are inside, right? Like the conversation that when God says to Lucifer, why did you choose that phase? That's how you see yourself. That I think we haven't, we've talked about the fact that they self-actualize, but I don't know that we've really had that spelled out for us before. And having it in that way, it asked in that way from God was really to me a very poignant moment that they didn't linger over it, which was fine, but was really, really interesting to me, in that moment. And then the other piece of sort of like, I started to say mental health kind of poignancy, but it's more than that. It is that, but it's also just sort of like mindset moment is at the very end for Maze, when she says, yeah, but a demon can't grow a soul, and God says, can't she? Right. And that's sort of like, I mean, in some ways the Wizard of Oz has been like we've been getting this message for forever, like you already have everything you need, like this is a Hollywood trope. But I think we keep coming back to it in Hollywood because we need it.
Yeah.
Like there's this constant, especially in this late stage capitalism, the culture scape in which we find ourselves, there's this constant sense that
hellscape, I think you mean.
I wasn't gonna call it that, but it's a shoe fence. But there is this constant sense that like I'll be happy when, I'll be worthy when, and it's always about like
what you don't have now.
Yeah. Like when I get this thing, when I get that car, when I get the promotion, when I lose 10 pounds, when I whatever the thing is that's out of reach.
Happiness is always on the other side of it.
Yeah. And it never is, because there's always another thing. And so to have this like under this message underlined, like, no, you already have it. You already have what you need to be happy, to be worthy in a very, I mean, it's not a metaphorical kind of worthiness. She thinks she doesn't have a soul. So that paired with, that's how you see yourself, that face. Why did you choose that? Is a really sort of interesting pairing that they don't linger over, right? They don't spell it out for us. They don't, nobody actually says like, oh, I was worthy the whole time, what I was looking for was here all the time. Like we never actually hear those words. And in fact, the implication is that she somehow has matured and grown a soul along the way. But
do you know what's interesting is that it dovetails very nicely with the conversation in that episode about parenting, because throughout this episode, and they do it like sometimes the case works, sometimes it doesn't. They did a really nice job of dovetailing the case and the theme in this one, because with Chloe and Trixie, with the almighty, the boxer, the doctor, playing God, the trainer playing God.
He actually says those words.
Yeah. The general who can't live up to her mother's expectations.
Colonel,
and then
the colonel.
Yeah. And then oh, that's right, her mother's the general. And then God realizing when he sees Lucifer's face how he has screwed up as a parent. Because to me, what the conversation he has with Trixie, which I really appreciated, he talks about how he was aiming for this one thing. He wanted his kids to self-actualize. He wanted to give them free will so that they could become what they were meant to become. And he thought he was doing the right thing by being hands-off. And then seeing how much self-loathing Lucifer has, because he manifests it in that face, makes it clear to him, oh, I thought I was doing the right thing and I wasn't. And that's, I feel like that informs what God says to Maze, because instead of him giving her mysterious ways again, because that's how he usually speaks, he actually says, can't she, in a way that like gives her the message more directly.
Although in his mysterious ways, right, he doesn't just say like, you already have.
Yeah. And that's, that's one of those things where I find that also like realistic, in that even if someone decides like, I need to be different, I need to change how I deal with people, they'll still be themselves.
Right. A leopard.
Like he's never going to be able to be like, I will spell it out for you and here's a flow chart. Like that's never going to be how he does things. But that's I really appreciated that. And then the conversation that Chloe and Trixie have at the end of the episode, in some ways I felt like, we've talked before about how like parenting on TV is not like real parenting. So like your kid's having a meltdown and you're like, why are you upset? Well, it's because of this. And a kid who is acting out to the point of stealing her mother's handcuffs and handcuffing a bully to the cafeteria table, which does feel like it's within character. I mean, we met Trixie after she just kicked a mean girl in her no touch square.
Right.
But at the same time, that's premeditated. That's a pretty big deal, like what she's done. But that conversation they have where Trixie is able to say like, okay, so we all make mistakes. We all are in denial. We're all, not dealing with things. And I know you're unhappy and I know it's because of Lucifer. And I really don't like that. And then her mom being like, I don't always know what I'm doing. And being able to have that conversation.
Makes great TV, but as the mother of an 11-year-old only child girl, that is not the way.
Yeah. It's it's like the sitcom trope, it all wraps up in 22 minutes. It's also so like the idea that an 11-year-old could be that in touch with their feelings, even after talking to Linda, who is like the world's best therapist. And boy, is that not appropriate for any babysitting. She's so enmeshed in her clients' lives. Anyway, so it's even with that, like the how in touch Trixie is with her feelings, how much she's willing to forgive Chloe for not seeing things, how much you're right. It doesn't really fit. It's
also just like maybe my kid would notice if I was sad for a while. I mean, I guess she would.
Mm-hmm.
But it just
that was the one.
Think she would have the emotional maturity to really see the constellations in that same way. I mean, she would either be worried that it was something she had done, or she'd just be mad at me. Right.
That was the thing that I found myself like going like about that. And my thought was that it was not appropriate for a parent to be talking to their child about their love life.
Yeah.
And so that Trixie would notice that something in her mother's love life is making her unhappy is the sort of thing that like it either shows that this kid is a little parentified, or that it's TV writers, but
yeah, I think like, and when I watched it the first time, and even this time when Linda says that like it's actually often like misplaced anger or whatever that actual term she uses, because you're angry at somebody else, she wouldn't have been angry at Lucifer. The anger would have been at Chloe.
Yeah, well, because Chloe's safe, because it's safe to be angry at her mother because her mother will always love her.
And even the conversation then that Chloe has with her, like, I tried to protect you. In my head, I'm like that time when Malcolm almost killed you both.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I mean, not that Chloe did anything wrong in that. I'm not saying that Chloe failed it to protect. I'm just saying like Trixie's been through some real shit.
She's been through some stuff. Like,
seriously traumatizing.
She's seen some things. Yeah.
And then there was the car accident when when Uriel first came to
Mhm.
town, and like I don't know. I just feel like this is not when Trixie would be mad at Lucifer. And
Mhm.
Trixie wouldn't be mad at Lucifer at all. It would be Chloe.
Mhm.
Chloe would
Mhm.
be the person she would want to kick in the shins.
Yeah.
It was much better TV to have
Mhm.
Trixie show up at the penthouse, having
And
lies
his
with
hair is
Dan,
majestic, and you know
and
it.
you know it, and have her kick him in the shins. Like
Yeah.
that was great TV.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel realistic.
Well, and that was one thing about the conversation between Trixie and Chloe, is that it felt like the kind of conversation they would have 10 years from now.
Yeah. Yep.
And that was like, and it was like, I appreciated it as like kind of the sort of like childhood postmortem, because it's too soon to have that kind of conversation, because Trixie's still very much a kid.
He's 11.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but the conversation between God and Trixie, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah. And
That was,
even the sort of confusion on Trixie's face when he says, I've never been a kid. And she's like,
okay then. But that was like, it was exactly what she needed, because he was validating her experience. Like, she's like, I've never been a parent, but I imagine it's tough. And he's like, I imagine being a kid's really tough too. And
yeah.
like, that's so validating.
Yeah, and it's not something that we actually say to children very often.
Mm-mm.
We often are like, get over it, stop being
Yeah.
childish.
Yeah.
We say to our children, stop being childish, which is
Yeah. It's not my favorite thing about myself as a parent, but there are times where like one of my kids will start with like, ever since X happened, and I'll be like, oh, for goodness sakes. I'll be like, stop. He's only got a decade's worth of experience total. This is a big deal.
yeah.
But yeah, it's because we forget how tough it is, or we never were kids.
Yeah.
So
right.
I do want to say, I feel like God is the only person who has had the appropriate reaction to getting a hug from Ella. Like I love that interaction. And even as but I also, like, there was a little part of me that got a little teary-eyed when he was just like, thank you so much for your support. It has definitely been appreciated.
Yeah, me too.
And like, there was something like, how inside the actor's studio they would end with like the same, like, I think 7 or 10 questions, and the last one was, you arrive at the pearly gates, what do you want God to say to you? And like that would be pretty good.
Yeah. Well, shall we move on to our least favorite?
Yes.
Of these two, at least.
Yeah. Well, I think of the series.
Maybe. It just, man.
So Dan Espinoza, Naked and Afraid, is one that really exposes my Achilles heel as a professional English major, storyteller, lover of lore, in that. And I think some of this has to do with the fact, with my ADHD, I take people at their word. I take things at their word. So I do not get subtext on first reading or viewing. And so, and I often, it takes several iterations before I'm like, oh yeah, there's the subtext. So I believed everything was actually happening while I was watching it. What's interesting is and this may have something to do with the fact that he doesn't watch the show, but I was watching it this afternoon. My husband came in and was kind of like watching over my shoulder. And even though at the end, when all of a sudden, like, the music starts playing, my husband goes like, what is happening right now? He did say, he's like, yeah, I knew something was up, because it was so campy. It was so much campier than usual. And I was like, I just didn't the first time I watched it, it just did not occur to me. And so I know that is a big part of the reason why I didn't like it, because I was suffering with Dan.
Me too. Oh,
Thinking
me
it was
too.
real.
Even if it's even knowing it wasn't real, even in this rewatch, which is only my second time through, I watched it last night. Knowing, I mean, I've seen it before. I know that this is all orchestrated by Lucifer and that Benito is not actually dead and you know, all the things. I still was suffering with Dan because Dan thought it was real. And I don't, maybe I have greater empathy for fictional characters than the average viewer, because I know this is one of like the fan favorites.
I know people adore this episode, and they think that like, because you fucking shot me, Daniel, is like the funniest line ever. And I'm like, I don't, I mean, it doesn't.
Chloe tried to poison him. Like it wouldn't have hurt him, but she thought that it would.
You know, I found it easier to watch this time. So this is only my second time viewing this episode. Same reason. Found it easier to watch this time for the same reason that I can handle any terrible thing that happens to people as long as it's prologue. As long as it's like background or backstory. If it's happening in front of me, like it's happening in real time, I'm not okay. But as long as it's backstory, I'm like, well, I know they made it through, so it's okay. And there were a number of little hints, and like one of the things that Lucifer said is, you know, this wouldn't have worked on Chloe because she's a detective, and Dan's like, so am I. And I was realizing there are a number of things that really should have like kind of indicated that this isn't what you think it is.
Like what? Can you, because I'm not sure.
Oh, sure. So, okay. The one that I remember thinking at the time, the first time I saw it, was Benito's head in the box. And I was just like, wow, they're going back to that same well, because Dan has already received a head in a box. So like that was like, okay, that's just odd to me that they did that. And I thought something similar about poison and antidote, because it's another the one that I did not catch but was very obvious in retrospect was when he shows up at the penthouse. What Lucifer is playing is that dun, 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 dun. That is like very clearly like not doing anything, you know, like you know, because if he's actually playing for himself, he plays like,
yeah, he doesn't play classics,
never. Yeah, classical. And so there things like that. There was a little bit of over the topness about some stuff, but I still was like horrified when the bullets started flying the first time around. This time around, because I knew it wasn't real. But the anguish he feels at that moment, like even everything up to that, I feel like is more forgivable than the anguish he feels at seeing people who like he cares about in terms of Maze, and then are, you know, friends of his in terms of the improv team. But again, knowing where knowing what the story is on the second watch, he is clearly in a funk at the beginning. And he's talking about, like he says to Luis before the whole thing starts, he's like, you know, nothing matters. And so like nothing matters. And by going through this ordeal, he realized that things do matter. Like, and he reconnects with his own sense of morality and his own sense of like why he does what he does, who he truly believes he is, and what he's willing to do. Because, and as Lucifer points out, like, I knew whenever you had to make a decision, you'd try to do the right thing. And so like reconnecting him with that is very much something that he needed. Like he says, I needed this.
Yeah.
And in a way, this was just like the massive version of Lucifer, like teasing him. Which at the beginning, like that Chloe says, like, I know it hurts you that you can't tease him right now. And because that's how you two show that you're friends and show your affection. It's just it's rough.
It just feels gross to me. Like
Yeah.
the whole episode just feels gross. I mean, there are fun
They're funny
and
moments.
funny moments.
Yeah.
Like in particular when the improv crew shows up and each of them is dressed tough, but like different tough, right? Like there's like the punk rock guy and there's like the
like 30s gangster,
the
main guy.
The main guy, the only guy who actually speaks, is like a 30s gangster.
Yeah.
But they're all different.
They're all different
kinds of, they do not look like
they do not
a
match.
gang. Yeah. They're all tough, but it's like different interpretations of tough. Like that is really funny. And like makes a certain amount of sense that if you just tell a group of improv people to look tough. That was just kind of fun. And there are some funny moments. I mean, even the bike shop that turns out to be a cycle, like a blinged out bicycle shop. Like
well, and then the group therapy session.
Yeah.
They end up having, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, there's definitely some funny moments in there. I've said it before, but the way my spouse put it was that it was very campy, and regarding it as camp can kind of help blunt the pain a little bit of watching this character who I do truly care about. Like I very much like Dan as a character. And I feel bad they make Kevin Alejandro look like such a goober because he is such a phenomenally attractive man. And he looks so gooberish. I think he does this so his chin looks weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
And like, to be fair, I think Kevin Alejandro had fun with this episode, which that also kind of makes it a little easier for me. But it reminds me of, there's I watched all of How I Met Your Mother, and I'm not proud of that.
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, I watched really like most of it, like all but the last season. So I've seen most of it.
It may have been the last season, may have been the 8th season. I don't even remember. Like by the time we got to the last season, boy, was I pissed off. Anyway, for Barney's bachelor party, Ted, since Barney so often wants things to be epic or legend, wait for it, dairy. So for his bachelor party, Ted ends up creating the worst night that Barney's ever had, because that is the only way to top all the legendary stuff he's already done. And so he's very stressed out now because Barney's kind of a piece of crap. That one didn't bother me. Although there were still, like, I feel secondhand embarrassment very strongly.
Me too. We have that same thing. Yeah. I don't remember that episode if I saw it, but the difference too is that like probably nobody died.
I don't think anybody died. I don't remember. There was they ended up getting Ralph Macchio and the guy who played the bad guy in
the Karate
Kid. Yeah. The blonde guy.
Who's like, I guess the protagonist in that new
in Cobra Kai. Yeah.
Anyway,
they got that, like, and there was something about that, and somebody got beat up, and I don't remember the details, because it's been such a time since I've seen it, but yeah, it's the fear of death in me, like.
But we're feeling responsible for the deaths of so many other people.
So many people.
Benito is not his fault, but everybody else. And the body count is really high.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, really high. Like all the Russian guys, all of
Luis's gang.
And
the Los X's. And his
improv.
And the improv. So like, honestly,
and Maze. So like, I mean, like, I still carry like major guilt from when I had to have my dog put down. Like, I it's not funny. It's not a
No,
prank. It's
no.
just cruel.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't like thinking of Lucifer as cruel, because
I feel the same way.
that's part of the point of this show for me that I
Mm-hmm.
glom onto, is
Mm-hmm.
that he's not in fact cruel. And that's
Mm-hmm.
part of why being the king of hell was such punishment,
So painful for him. Yes.
because he's not in fact cruel.
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing him as cruel is really hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a hard time seeing it any other way.
Yeah.
And
Well,
even the because you fucking shot me, Daniel, like, but you're the devil. And
and nothing happened.
and even if Chloe had been there and you had been vulnerable, as soon as she got far enough away,
Mm-hmm.
you
Well,
would have
she was there, but
recovered.
he all of a sudden was
I know, but
But
even if he had still been vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
if she just immediately, instead of running to him, if she'd immediately run as far away as possible,
Mm-hmm.
presumably he would have recovered. Plus, he was wearing Lilith's ring, which I know we haven't. We just forgot about. But
Yeah.
and we know that Daniel is mortal and was under the influence of Michael.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, like, give the guy a fucking pass.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, even be mad at him, but like $5.4 million and making him think that he has caused the death of 24 people.
I will say the $5.4 million to me feels like an indication to Dan how much Dan means to Lucifer. In that, like, I know, but when
Grasping to make this not cruel.
no, well, here's the thing: pranks are cruel. Like, practical jokes are cruel. There's a book that I love that I listen to fall asleep to, where there's a practical joker who's a minor character, and then the main character is like, oh, I knew it couldn't have been my friend because there's not a dram of meanness in him, and you have to be mean to commit practical jokes. And like not a dram of meanness. I love that that description. So the thing, so I cannot wrap my head around the cruelty of a practical joke. I can wrap my head around the idea of someone valuing a friendship in a way that they can't talk to each other about because they can't. And the only way they can show it is by throwing themselves into, I mean, meticulous planning at a ridiculous amount of money. Because the way that they connect with each other is through being jerks to each other.
Yeah.
So it's not going to make me like
movies.
Yeah. Which I loved his decorations in his apartment.
His home.
Yeah. I also love the fact you only have kombucha. What if you have guests?
Buy some LaCroix or something.
Buy some LaCroix.
Yeah.
So I will never like this episode. I will never see what other people see in it. I wonder if someone who is more able to see subtext, more able to recognize some being winked at earlier would have liked it better. Even with the knowing that Dan didn't know. But I can see, in the same way that people really like when they can guess who done it in a murder mystery, if you can see, like, before Dan does, that it's like, oh, this is a setup, there's something enjoyable about that. It's the dramatic irony that you love.
Yeah. So, and maybe like when Lucifer says, I never lie, and I know this is going to go perfectly.
Yeah.
He means for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and he even says directly, he's like, it's all about appearances.
Yeah.
And you know, there was another, like, the other one that I noticed was when Dan says, how do I look? And he's like, pretty good, actually. That was the response to each other back in season 1 when Lucifer got shot. by Malcolm. Come to think of it, I think. No, well, Malcolm was supposed to come shoot him, and Dan came running to stop him, and Lucifer had been shot by someone else, but was fine. And so he's like, "How do I look?" "Pretty good, actually," is what Dan said to him. So like there were like Easter eggs in there. So that's another thing that I am imagining the fandom likes, is like, oh, I recognize that from that, and I recognize that from that.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just so hard to decouple the meanness.
Yeah, that's agreed. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking for a minute. We've been overthinking for a minute. So, maybe can we transition to fluff? Are you ready?
Absolutely. I would love to talk fluff.
So, I don't know if this is fluff or not, but I love in this episode in Daniel Espinoza, Naked and Afraid, the scene with Ella when she's working on her novel about, I mean, I wish they had brought that back again, about the forensic scientist who talks to ghosts, who's cheerful, but also has, you know, the darkness inside her. I thought that was really adorable to hear her talking about herself in that way, in a really, I say adorable, I mean endearing, and also like poignant. I loved that moment of Ella sort of like getting excited about her novel, which was a self-insert, you know, or semi-autobiographical, and in such a pleasant way. Anyway, I love that moment.
Yeah, that was pretty great. I also like, I really appreciated that she had actually thought through all of that.
The pig's blood and
the ground beef
for the brain matter. Yes. Yeah. And Lucifer knew that that would happen in some way.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. You know, that also shows the amount of respect that Lucifer has for Dan, because he never at any point worried that Dan would actually try to hurt the Svetlana. I mean, like, there was no concern whatsoever that was what was going to happen.
No.
So, I mean, that's a huge sign of respect, you know. Shouldn't have put him in that position, but anyway. Very, very little fluff piece, but when God gets the rattle back from Charlie and he's like, all right, I'm going to take my powers back, I'm sitting there thinking, like, it's not going to be lights. He's God. It's just back.
No,
there doesn't need to be a special effect.
Lights and a fan. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that bothered me.
Although Linda's response was pretty great. What the hell just happened? Actually, I don't think she said hell. I think she said what just happened. But still,
yeah,
the hell was implied. Yeah, that was pretty great. That was pretty great. And the you know, it's interesting too in terms of fluff, when God is in the airplane with the bad guys, you know, with the colonel and her crew, and he's like telling like baby stories about Lucifer and the rebellion, and like they're like laughing and charmed. Like, what are they imagining?
Yeah.
Like, are they imagining a 7-year-old, or like, because what we overheard was just confusing.
Odd. Very odd. It's kind of fluff. It's kind of just a small detail, but when they're looking for, they talk to the surgeon, and she's like, oh yeah, it was the drug, I think YSD. And is like, you know, it's very exclusive. He's like, oh yes, very exclusive. Okay, what does it look like? And she's like, small pink. And he's like, okay, so what kind of pink? And Bucanvia.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, we should have probably known when she was able to say, like, it's ballet slipper pink, after having seen
she only saw it once.
Whereas like small and pink should have probably been all she could handle if she never actually seen it.
Right. Right.
So
maybe not even recognize it. Like when he found it, be like, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That should have been an indicator.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that was there for us, right?
Yeah.
So here's another piece of fluff. A couple of episodes ago, when Lucifer offers God a donut in the precinct, and God says, I prefer the ones with sprinkles.
Or with cereal on it.
Is that what it was?
It was, yeah, because it had like Fruit Loops on it.
Got it. Well, that they brought that back. The kind of donut he prefers is what he offered to Trixie, which I thought was, I appreciated that.
Lovely.
That was nice.
Yeah, it's nice little continuity. Oh, Dan being blown up. Oh
yeah,
I forgot that was in this episode,
and he remembers it.
Yes. Yeah.
And when Lucifer's like, did you do that on purpose? Of course I meant to put him back together. It's a great line.
It's a great line. Dennis Haysbert. Like, if you'd asked me when I'd seen the first 3 or 4 seasons, like if it made any sense to cast an actor as God in this show, I would have been like, absolutely not. I still, like, to this day, I'm just like, it's a little odd just because of how much God would have to answer for, even just within this universe. But man, they did a nice job. And part of it was Dennis Haysbert. I also want to mention, I feel like I saw DB Woodside somewhere talking about how much it meant to him to have God played by
Black,
a man who looks like him. And like and I was thinking of that when they were asking the bartender where he was, and he's like, tall, broad-shouldered, piercing eyes. That's a little like me.
Yeah. No, that was not at all lost on me. Which only adds to what God has to answer for. Even in this universe. I mean, we lost Caleb in this universe. Yeah. Well, like institutional racism altogether in this universe. I'm like, I know you do the whole, you're really committed to the whole free will thing, but we can use a couple of miracles here and there. Just change some minds. Just stick a finger in, massage some minds. It's hard, man. I mean, like, especially like in this show sets it up as a parent, right? And like, I want my kid to be independent and make her own decisions, but if I see someone's going to be harmed, I intervene. You know? Yeah. Anyway, so that's a little theological aside. I feel like that could be the subtitle of the show, Lightbringers, a little theological aside. What you get when you talk with me. That's how it goes. Oh my goodness. Well, I think we've overthunk it enough for one day. What do you think? Yeah, we probably have overthunk it enough. So should we plug our other projects? Okay. Do you want to do it? Sure. If you've been enjoying little theological asides from the two of us, we are launching a podcast called Deep Thoughts About Stupid Shit, where we overthink all kinds of pop culture. Because pop culture is still culture, and shouldn't you know what's in your head? Right. That's right. Yeah. I think that I was thinking about it the other day. Like our broader culture, like, wants us to think that like it just doesn't matter. There's this like hand wave. If it isn't like, like high culture, if it's not. It's very much the same as men. Yeah. It's very much the same as like, it's just a joke. Don't take it seriously. Exactly. Which is very much gaslighting. Yeah. So this is what shapes how we behave. It really is. Pop culture really, really, it matters. It matters deeply. Indeed. So we have already, by the time you get this, we'll have some episodes coming out talking about Twilight, talking about Muppets from Space, talking about The Princess Bride, and we've got a few others in the hopper that we're looking forward to overthinking together. Yep, audio only. wherever you find podcasts.
Yes.